Well, greetings and salutations, everyone, and welcome to today's bonus upload. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below. The merch is displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description below. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It doesn't cost you a cent. Click that like button. It takes half a second. If you don't want to miss any of the informative uploads I put out twice daily, click that bell icon. And finally, last but definitely not least, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all these things, they really do help. And guys, they definitely matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with tonight's bonus, shall we? Today's first part of the upload. My mom has had many strange and paranormal encounters in her life, including meeting her own doppelganger as a child. She has had many stories to tell me, and I grew up hearing them. About a flying cup in her bedroom and a vacuum cleaner running by itself when she was a little girl. However, there's still one that baffles me to this day, and I want to know if anyone else has seen this creature or knows anything about it. So, please let me know if you do. Years ago, before I was born, I'm 18, so it's been a good while, my mom had been staying at her best friend's house for a while. Her best friend was married, so her husband was also there. But he and my mom barely interacted with each other when she was there. He always kept to himself and still does to this day. They're still friends. As my mom put it, she was parked in her friend's driveway waiting for her friend to come out so they could leave. My mom was alone in the car, fiddling around with buttons and such, and she glanced in her rearview mirror. What she saw horrified her. In the rearview mirror, she saw a large black dog walking on its hind legs. Now, I'm skeptical of everything, so I asked my mom if it was just a random big old dog standing on its back legs using the car for support. She insisted that no, it was walking like a human. It did not touch her car. It walked along the sidewalk like a human would. It did not once get on all fours. It walked on two legs. She swears this. And I can see by genuine terror in her eyes that she was telling the truth. I asked her if she saw the legs. She said as soon as she looked behind her, it had vanished into thin air, gone like a ghost. When she looked around, there wasn't a single dog or a person in sight. That's not the scariest part. For me, at least. My mom visited her best friend again. Not at the house. She hates that house now. A few years ago, and the subject of spirits came up. My mom told her exactly what she told me about the dog, or whatever it was, walking behind the car. In her driveway, because she had never told anyone. Her best friend looked at her, pale in the face, and said, "My husband told me he saw it too. It walked on two legs. Two people saw the same exact creature in the same spot at different times. I've heard legends of dogs and how, if you see it so many times, it signals a certain fate or fortune. But what was that? Have anyone ever seen anything like this? I'm terrified because I just passed my driving test. And if I see this thing or anything remotely unnatural in my rear view, I'll have a heart attack. I want more information on this walking dog. Is there some sort of omen or warning? Was it just that the house is haunted? What did my mom and her friend's husband really encounter those days? Nowadays, we have backup cameras in our cars. I don't ever want to see inhuman legs walking like that in my camera. I already have a bunch of eerie things going on, and I'm afraid. I just asked my mom about that dog thing again, and she told me a little bit more stuff to clarify. The sightings actually happened here in Houston, not Waller. My mom's best friend left the house where the dog was seen, and it's not far from where I'm living now, so I'm about 99% sure that it was not a bear or a wild animal. We live in the city, and there is no wildlife in this area, no woods near where the house was. And my mom swears that it was a dog, specifically a black dog walking on its back legs. She is 100% certain that it was a dog, and her friend's husband said it was a dog as well. After some consideration, I'm leaning towards a shapeshifter. My mom is familiar with them and thinks that's what it could have been. Regardless, she never returned to that house after her stay and was happy when her friend moved. So, that was in Houston, in the city. Not a bear or a wild animal, 100% a black dog. She had a deer in the headlights. Look, when I asked her about it, it's still not left her mind after all of these years. Today's second part of the upload. This was almost 10 years ago in a suburban neighborhood. It was dark, the moon was up, and I was walking a small rat dog named Gracie. She's half Pomeranian, half Chihuahua. I hate her. Still walking her anyway, I hear a growl and look behind me. I see a big black creature. It was very wolf-like and large. I backed up a step and picked up the rat dog. It growled again and opened its maw. The eyes seemed golden red, but it could have been from the streetlight. It wasn't too far back, maybe 30 feet. I didn't want to move. I took off running down the road. Needless to say, it chased me. I didn't look back. I didn't stop until I didn't hear it anymore. Today's third part of the upload. In 1978, I was elk hunting west of a town called Du Bois in Wyoming. I was on my way back to a town for a hot meal, gas, and to restock my food supplies. I was camping in a tent in the back country. I was on the highway going west to a town coming in and found a man wearing only hunting shoes, a heavy shirt, and a goose-down vest. In Wyoming, in the middle of October, then, this was definitely underdressed. The daytime temps were at the high of 30s at best, and nights were in the single digits or lower. Well, he got onto the road and started waving his arms wildly and begging me to stop. I saw his eyes had a trail of tears on his face, trailing down in the dirt on him. I pulled over to the side of this deserted road to see what his problem was. I thought he might have had a wreck on some icy spots of the highway. Little did I know this would change my life thinking and the way I hunted by myself up here forever. He ran to the side of my pickup, and I could see he was very scared about something. He grasped the pickup and begged me with tears in his eyes to take him to town. I couldn't say no to this man. I asked him if he was in a wreck or something, and he said, "No, please just get me out of here. I need to go somewhere safe." I thought odd that he would say this, and as I had my right hand on my pistol on my lap, guys, you never know, I said, "Get in." He looked around at the tree line along the roadway and again at the passenger side of the pickup. As he was coming around the truck, I pulled the pistol in the side pocket of the door, and he got inside and locked the door and made sure the window was up, again watching the tree line. "Go, please," is all he said. I started back towards town, and then I noticed scratches on his face, clothes, and hands, and his whole body was shaking. After we went a couple of miles, he somewhat slowed down on rechecking the tree line in the passenger rearview mirror. "You okay, buddy?" I asked. He stared at me for a few seconds and just broke down crying like a little child. "Yeah, but I don't know. I think I'm a crazy man. I just had some shit happen, and I ain't going back there for nothing. I hope the guys are okay." He composed himself some and started to explain. "I'm hunting here with two buddies, and we always hunt below Brooks Lane. And we come to Wyoming. Usually we get elk or deer. We never go home skunked here. Just love it. I was going along a trail I had been on many times to get to a small overlook and sit for a while. It was their turn to push the elk to me. I was almost there when I walked past this stand of 3 trees close together, and on the other side was this huge lizard. It was standing easily over 6.5 feet tall, golden bronze color, with a vest and short metallic-looking briefs. I could tell it was male. I guessed that he had a black thing in his clawed hand. Its eyes looked like cats, and it had a tail. I just stood there with my rifle in my hands across my chest, froze kind of like I was looking into the face of death. I just know it. I coughed a little, and its arm with the black thing came up so fast. I could hardly see it. Something hit my whole body from my feet to my head, and I fell back on the ground. I don't know if I flew or fell. I just went backwards. It came slowly walking up to me. I could hear it, and I could only move my eyes slightly as it came into view. It just looked down at me with its mouth slightly open, making this low hissing sound, and its forked tongue slightly coming out of its mouth. Its head turned down looking at me, and did this for a few moments. I could hear it breathing, see the nose holes working, see its chest, muscles tensing and relaxing all over its body. I was just froze there looking up. I couldn't look at it directly, and I couldn't close my eyes either. Its expression never changed, only the eyes moved sometimes slow, like sometimes so fast you could hardly see 'em. On its sleeveless shirt, it had kind of an O with a smaller, screwy offset Y and a Z, I think. It finally walked away down the trail. I don't know how long I lied there from the sun movement. It could have been a couple of hours. I could hear the forest sounds, bird, wind, trees, animals going about their day like nothing happened. I would will my arms and legs to move, hell, even my fingers. When I could move, every muscle in my body ached as I would use it, like after a workout at the gym or something. I knew if I went down the hill, I would come to an old creek bottom and hopefully not see it again. I did that. I followed it to the canyon bottom and then to the road and to you. Thanks again. Don't make me get out. I took off my coat. I guess I forgot my rifle, cap. I don't need them. I hope Jake and Bobby are okay. I heard something following me when I first got up. It was really heavy sounding and would stop when I stopped, and once or twice I could hear breathing like it did. Kind of a raspy wheeze sound. I would start running or walking again. I couldn't rest. He told me which motel to let him off at, and I did. He thanked me many times, and I got out and went into the office. I never saw him again. I thought about that fantastic story and wondered if it was true, but it could be, right? I didn't hear anything about someone having problems anywhere around town that fall. I asked about the man the next year at the motel. No one could remember him. And if anyone knew stories about the area, I didn't get real specific or anything. I didn't press it. My buddy, whom I am close to and explored stuff like this at every opportunity, was very interested in the story and location. He took off up there the next summer for a long weekend. I had to work, so I couldn't go. I didn't see him until a couple of weeks later. I asked him about it and what he found out. He looked at me and got really serious. "Dude, don't go up there. Promise me, okay?" was all he said. I could tell he meant it. I would go with this guy sometimes, and he was very analytical and professional when doing things like taping sounds at cemeteries, exploring ghost hunts, and others. He never acted scared at any other time. I've never hunted or been on that side of the highway since then, but I've talked to others who have seen large barefoot prints, strange flying stuff or howls over the years since then, around the Wind River Mountains, for what it's worth. I do like to read about the unknown and sometimes explore it, but, and I mean but, if it just feels wrong before I start, I leave it alone. Not when I hunt anymore. I don't fear bears, wolves, or people, but I am weary of what else might be out there, and always let someone know where I'm going and when I should be back. Today's fourth part of the upload. I don't know what the real name is, but we call these things gray men. We see them about once every 3 to 5 years in Niagara region. They look like large, slender, sleek gray dogs. They can swim. Last time my buddy and I were walking home over the 15-mile creek bridge to our area, we saw 2 dogs in the water, but something was different. We watched them swim to the bank, get out, shake off, and then stand up and walk on 2 legs. This is no joke. We were spotted and followed for about 2 kilometers down the train tracks. They had no problem running on 4 legs, and they did on 2. They were about 90 to 120 pounds, with black, deep-set eyes. Stood anywhere between 5'6" to 5'10". They looked like they had wetsuits on, but when they shook off, you could see the fur shake. When they stopped shaking, it went back to a plastic-like appearance. We didn't feel threatened, though. It was just weird, like they wanted to watch us, but spook us off at the same time. I don't remember any smells, and they didn't throw any stones at us like Bigfoot. Best way to describe the sounds they made was like a hyena crossed with a cat or something. It was creepy, but wasn't threatening. They watched us. I don't know if this was a Dogman either, because he sounds really aggressive. There wasn't a smell from them, but they like crackled and made a grr woof noise like the hyenas make. Today's final encounter. Summers in northern Michigan, Cadillac, Michigan, can be long drawn-out days of sweltering humidity. Midsummer daylight can last till about 11 p.m. I was about 10, maybe 12, with an older brother and a sister. My father owned his own construction business and kept late hours. We lived out in the country, and our house sat on 20 acres of wooded land, pine grove to the north, hardwoods and pine mix to the southwest and east. There was a small creek that ran through our backyard that would lead back to a beaver dam. About 3 miles or so up the road from us was an old landfill. Now, like I had mentioned, my father owned his own business and worked late hours. Often he would come home around 9 or 10 p.m., and after being out in the heat all day, he would find more comfort in his full-size dually Ford with air condition and some cold beer. So he would come home and often pick my mom up, and they would just go on cruising on the endless country dirt roads, enjoying beer and catching up on the day's events. Quite often, they would drive down to the road that led to the old landfill, which was basically a dead-end road. They would park on the side of the road very close to the ditch. My dad used to do that to freak my mom out. The country roads in northern Michigan grew very thick brush that extended through the ditch and right up to the very edge of the road. My dad used to tease my mom by saying a bear is going to press its nose against the window and roar. They've done this cruise thing for years and generally only saw the occasional raccoon or deer. Our parents came into the house somewhat rushed. My mom led, my dad followed, trying to explain something. I asked what happened. My dad explained the following. We were parked down the road going to Smiley's. As we sat there, your mother said she could hear something moving around in the bushes. It was 11 p.m., so it was dark now. My dad apparently tried to ease my mom by saying if it were a bear, it would have eaten her by now. The night ended. A few days later, my parents again went to their hangout and parked in the same spot. It got dark again, and my mom was first to hear something in the woods on her side of the truck. This time, they both heard something. This time, it was much larger. Large sticks were breaking and snapping. My dad figured it must be a deer or a black bear. They turned on the radio and sat and listened. My mom said she could hear something breathing out there. My dad said he heard the same thing. It was getting closer, and they felt it brush up against the side of the truck that was near the ditch. It caused the truck to sway. My mom screamed and insisted that they get the hell out of there. Again, they came home and told of their experience. My dad figured out it must have been one big friggin' bear, but as he sped off and looked into his rearview mirror, a large black object was bounding across the road, sort of going a two-legged run to all fours, and disappeared in the dark. I remember just being amazed by this story. You see, my dad is a simple man. Life then was cut and dry, black and white. Everything can be explained. But there was something different in his eyes that told me he wasn't convinced, nor when he glanced at my mom, and she would return this look of fear that I will never forget. The after-work cruising had stopped now. My mom refused to go. My dad would come and sit at the table in our dining room with the lights off and discuss the day in the dark with my mom. Living in the country in Michigan with no air conditioning meant that night every window in the house was open. Things had been quiet for a few days. It was around 11:30 at night, and us kids were in bed. I shared a room with my older brother, and my sister was next door. I must have just drifted off, and then it happened. The most terrifying howl scream I had ever heard. It was so loud, it was as if it was right next to the house. I can still hear the sound in my head, as if it happened just the other day. Growing up in the country in northern Michigan, and being outdoors all day until dark, you hear it all. My dad was a hunter and knew all the native animal sounds, but what we heard that night, none of us, not even my dad, said he knew what the hell it was. Upon hearing the screeching howl, I heard my dad jump up and slam the dining room chair into the wall, exclaiming to my mom, "Get my 12 gauge." My brother and I are now in the dining room along with my sister, who heard the screech. My dad's composure was now different. It was fight or flight, and he was getting a gun loaded. This was more than a bear. We've had bears in our backyard before, and my dad would just use a flashlight and yell at them, and they would usually move on. This night was different. My dad had told my mom to shut the sliding glass door after he walked out the backyard. I remember looking out the back door from a safe distance as my dad disappeared into the darkness with his gun and flashlight. We had just one light on the back of our house near the door, which didn't offer light beyond 20 feet or so. My dad was now walking straight into our backyard towards the small storage shed. Our backyard was cleared and mowed, about 8 acres back to the river and 10 acres wide to the north and south. It was like we just cut out a chunk of wooded land and stuck a house in the middle. Being surrounded by pines and hardwood was usually an advantage to Michiganders in the winter because it was a natural snow fence. However, this night, there was only one advantage, and it wasn't in my dad's favor. He walked with his gun shouting nervously, as I remember, hoping to run off whatever the hell was out there. I was still standing in the dining room, which led directly into the living room, where we had a large window which showed out our front yard. There was moonlight, and the sky was clear. I remember looking out the front room window and seeing a large, dark object run across our driveway, alternating from the back legs to all fours, similar how you might see a large gorilla run. My brother saw it and yelled out to my dad through the kitchen window, "It's out front and it's headed to the side yard to your right." My dad stood out there, frozen and listening. It got quiet. We heard nothing from the house. We had a dog outside that never made a sound. I remember thinking, Rex is dead. This dog barked at everything except tonight. He barked once upon the initial screech, then fell silent. My dad came rushing back into the house after what seemed like an eternity. He told my mom to shut and lock all the windows and doors. He then said something that to this day gives me the chills. He said, "I don't know what the hell is out there, but whatever it is, felt like it was hunting me." He then explained that once it ran into the pines to the north, that it was staying just inside the tree line, keeping cover. As he walked, it would move. He heard branches breaking, sticks crackling loudly from its weight. He would occasionally catch glimpses of something dark and then see a branch wiggle. The creature kept moving. At one point, as my dad stood still, he could hear it continue to move west, then south, then east on the other side of him. That was when he came back in and decided to lock down the house. Whatever it was, he felt it clearly had the upper hand, regardless of the gun and flashlight. My dad sat up for the rest of that night in the kitchen with the gun on his lap. It was probably about an hour later or so later that I was again awakened by a hideous scream of a rabbit being captured. Anyone who has ever heard a rabbit cry will understand this one. My dad stated that son of a bitch is after the rabbits. The dog in the backyard never barked. The next morning, my brother and I went to have a look around. My dog Rex was all right, but he stayed cowered in the back of his doghouse. He had to be coaxed out. We wandered out behind the shed and saw something that just blew our minds. Our shed simply sat on a ground, no cement foundation. Rabbits had burrowed tunnels under it, and we had a population of about 50 or so rabbits that just ran free in our yard. But when we walked to the back of the shed, there was a huge pile of sand in a tunnel that I could have surely fit into. There were large claw marks where it was digging. We could make out impressions of what appeared to be maybe a rear end and 2 heel prints out of the front. It reminded me of how you might see a child sitting in a sandbox digging a hole with its feet planted in front of them, and its hands would drag back the sand and push it to the side of them. There was rabbit hair everywhere. A few rabbits that survived thumped their feet and ran off to the brush, obviously still nervous from what had taken place earlier. We told my dad what we saw when we saw him again, and he just had this look on his face that was less than convincing when he said it must have been coyotes or something. I guess we knew to ourselves what he really meant. None of us really knew, but in times like this, and at my age, an answer is an answer. I was able to find some reassurance, but have always known that there was more to it. I don't even remember hearing the creature ever again, but there was some times when I felt like something was watching me from that tree line. We never really spoke much about it after that night, even to this day. My dad still has the unassured look when he tries to give an explanation. My mom sticks to the Dogman story. Me? I find the woods in northern Michigan to be a place of enchantment and great mystery. There's something out there. The Native American tribes of Michigan knew it. Now I do as well. Alright everyone, I hope you all enjoyed tonight's bonus upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Everyone, please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant while in the woods. God bless each and every one of you.